The first sound I remember wasn't the gunfire. It was the scream of a child. High-pitched, sharp, real. It cut through the smoke, through the chaos, through the orders blaring in my headset. And for a moment it was the only thing that reminded me I was still human. We were pinned down in an alley somewhere near the old market district of Fallujah. The air stank of burned plastic and blood. My squad was reduced from 12 men to 5 in less than 10 minutes. Every shadow looked like a muzzle flash. Every corner whispered death. Corporal Jensen was slumped beside me, his hands pressed against a wound in his abdomen. The blood kept slipping through his fingers like oil. "Stay with me," I muttered, my voice trembling. "Just stay with me." But Jensen's eyes weren't really on me anymore. They were staring at something far away, maybe back home, maybe nowhere at all. That's when I heard it again. That scream. A child's voice echoing from inside one of the ruined buildings across the street. I remember thinking, no, not now, not another one. But I couldn't ignore it. 2 days earlier, we had rolled into the city under the midday sun. The mission was simple: clear a 3-block radius and secure a supply route. It sounded easy on paper, but everyone knew Fallujah was a maze of death. Kids waved at our convoy when we entered. Some smiling, some glaring. Captain Rhodes told us to keep our heads down and our hearts locked up. "Don't play hero," he said. "This place eats heroes for breakfast." At night, I'd lie awake listening to the distant thud of mortars, wondering how many people in those buildings were praying for us to leave, or die. Then came the ambush. We were crossing a narrow street when the world exploded. A hidden IED tore apart the Humvee ahead of us, and everything turned into dust and fire. The shockwave threw me backward, ears ringing, vision flickering like a broken screen. When I got up, half the squad was gone. After that, it was just survival. Now, crouched in that alley, my rifle shaking in my hands, I kept hearing that child's voice. "Help me!" It came in waves, distant but desperate. Private Morales looked at me, his face pale under the dirt. "Sir, it's a trap. It has to be." Maybe he was right. Insurgents had used recordings before, kids' cries, women's voices, to lure soldiers out. But something in my gut twisted. This didn't sound like a recording. "Cover me," I said, stepping into the open. Morales swore under his breath but lifted his rifle. The air was thick with dust and the metallic taste of fear. I crossed the street, heart pounding so loud it drowned out everything else. The doorway was half collapsed, the walls covered in bullet holes. Inside, it was silent. Too silent. Then, from the corner, I saw movement. A little girl, maybe 8 or 9, barefoot, her face streaked with soot. She looked up at me, eyes wide. "It's okay," I whispered, lowering my weapon. "You're safe." She didn't answer. She just stared and pointed behind me. I turned. A man was standing in the hallway, his eyes burning with something between rage and despair. He wasn't holding a gun. He had something worse. A detonator clutched in his trembling hand. I froze. For a second, everything was still, like the world had stopped breathing. The man said something in Arabic, his voice breaking. I didn't understand the words, but I understood the meaning. He was going to take us all. The next moments blurred. A shot, a flash, a sound like thunder. The floor buckled. The girl screamed again. When I woke up, there was only smoke. The room was gone. Half the building collapsed. My ears buzzed with static. My mouth was full of dust. I crawled toward the light, dragging my leg that didn't seem to work anymore. Outside, Morales was yelling for survivors. I looked back inside. The man was gone. The detonator lay twisted near the debris. But the girl, she was still there, unharmed, standing in the middle of the wreckage. She looked at me, not scared, not crying, just watching. And then she whispered something. I couldn't hear it clearly, but it sounded like my name. My blood ran cold. She couldn't have known that. "Who are you?" I asked. She didn't answer. Just turned and walked into the smoke until she disappeared. Hours later, when evac finally came, they said no child had been found, no bodies, nothing. I told them what I saw. They looked at me like I'd inhaled too much smoke, but I know what I heard. what I saw. That night back at the outpost, I sat alone cleaning my weapon, trying to scrub the smell of burned sand from my hands. Then, over the faint hum of generators, I heard it again. That same voice. Soft, childlike, calling my name. I looked around, heart pounding. Nobody else reacted. Since that day, I hear her sometimes, in the static of a radio, in the wind between buildings, in the silence before sleep. I tell myself it's guilt, or trauma, or some trick my brain plays to make sense of everything I lost. But deep down, I know better. War doesn't end when you leave the battlefield. It follows you. It learns your name. And sometimes, it calls it back. They said I was lucky to be alive. That's what the medic told me when I woke up in the field hospital 3 days later. Lucky. Funny how that word loses all meaning after you've seen men burned alive and children vanish into smoke. My leg was bandaged, my ears still ringing. The world sounded like it was underwater, muffled, distant, unreal. But even through the haze of morphine, I could hear her voice. That same child, whispering my name. I jolted upright, tearing at the IV in my arm. "Easy, soldier," the nurse said. But I wasn't listening. I looked around the tent, rows of wounded men, moaning, coughing, praying. But none of them could hear it. That's when I realized something had followed me out of that building. After a week, they sent me back to the forward operating base. I was limping, barely fit for duty, but command needed bodies, and I needed to believe I still had a purpose. Morales met me at the gate. His eyes had dark circles beneath them, his hands trembling slightly as he smoked. "Didn't think you'd make it," he said, half joking. "Me neither. We didn't talk about what happened in that alley. We didn't mention the girl, but the silence between us said enough. The night as I tried to sleep, the generators outside hummed in rhythm with my heartbeat. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her, standing in the smoke, pointing behind me. The same whisper echoed again and again. "You left me." I told myself it was just trauma. That's what the psychiatrist called it, survivor's guilt. But guilt doesn't make doors slam shut in empty rooms. It doesn't turn your radio on at 3 a.m., with a child's laughter crackling through the static. 3 days later, our unit received orders to sweep another district on the city's edge. Same objective: secure, search, survive. But as we advanced, every corner looked familiar, like déjà vu painted in blood and dust. The streets twisted in the same way, the broken windows, the scattered toys. And then, out of nowhere, Morales froze. "Hey, do you hear that?" he whispered. I did. A faint crying drifting through the wind, the same pitch, the same rhythm. "No," I said, gripping my rifle tighter. "We're not doing this again." But it was too late. The sound was leading us forward, pulling us through the ruins like a thread. We reached an old apartment building. The doorway was blackened from fire, the walls collapsing inward. Inside, the crying stopped. I switched on my flashlight. The beam landed on something scratched into the wall, Arabic words, half burned, dripping with soot. Morales squinted. "What does it say?" I didn't speak the language, but I recognized one symbol. It was the same mark we'd seen painted near the first blast site. The locals called it the Seal of the Lost. A superstition, they said, a warning. And then I saw her. The girl stood at the end of the hallway, barefoot, her white dress covered in ash. Same face, same hollow eyes. "Jesus Christ," Morales breathed. "That's not possible." I lifted my weapon, my hands shaking. "Stay back," I said. She tilted her head, studying us. Then she smiled. It wasn't a child's smile. It was something older, something that knew exactly how to terrify you. The flashlight flickered, the air turned cold, and then the entire building seemed to breathe. Walls groaned, dust fell from the ceiling, and the crying turned into laughter. "Run!" I yelled. We stumbled back into the street as the building caved in behind us, a roar of concrete and flame. When I looked back, there was nothing left but rubble, and a single doll lying on the road, face melted, eyes staring straight at me. That night, Morales wouldn't speak. He sat in silence, chain-smoking until dawn. The next morning, he was gone. They found his body 2 miles from base, his weapon untouched, his face frozen in terror. The report said suicide, but I saw the expression in his eyes. That wasn't fear of dying. That was fear of seeing something no one else could. After that, they sent me home, medically discharged, physically fine, mentally broken. They said I needed time. Time doesn't fix what's inside your head when the war follows you into your dreams. Back home, the silence was worse than the gunfire. Every sudden noise felt like an explosion. Every shadow looked like smoke. I tried therapy. I tried faith. I tried drowning it all in whiskey. None of it worked. Then one night I woke up to the sound of footsteps in my hallway. Light, careful, like a child's. I grabbed my pistol, heart racing. The sound moved closer until it stopped outside my door. I waited, not breathing. Then a soft knock. 3 times. I opened the door slowly, weapon raised. The hallway was empty. But on the floor there were small, dusty footprints leading toward the kitchen. And there, standing in the glow of the refrigerator light, was the same girl. Her eyes met mine. She didn't move, didn't speak, just watched me as if waiting for something. "Why me?" I whispered. She tilted her head again, the same eerie gesture. Then she opened her mouth. And when she spoke, it wasn't her voice. It was Jensen's, my dead teammate. "You left me," it said. The words hit like shrapnel. I dropped the gun. "No." The voice changed again. Morales, then Captain Rhodes, then dozens more. All the names, all the faces I'd lost, overlapping, whispering, accusing. "You left us." I stumbled backward, the room spinning. The light flickered, and for a moment every shadow in that kitchen took the shape of someone I'd buried. Then, silence. When I looked up, she was gone. It's been years now. I live alone in a small town where nobody asks questions. I keep the blinds closed, the lights dim. Most nights I sit by the window waiting for the sound I know will come. The footsteps, the knock, the whisper of my name. I used to think it was punishment, that I was haunted because I failed. But the more I think about it, the more I wonder if I brought something back with me. Maybe she isn't a ghost. Maybe she's what war really is. Not a battle, not a memory, but a thing that feeds on guilt and fear, wearing the faces we can't forget. And maybe she never left Fallujah. Maybe I never did either. Because sometimes when the night is quiet and the air feels heavy with dust, I still hear that child's voice, soft, almost tender, whispering from the dark, "Come back."
If you want to uncover more hidden files, subscribe, turn on the bell, and stay with the Midnight Archives. You've been watching the Midnight Archives. The next file unlocks soon.